By noon, Karen had assembled what she privately called her nuclear option toolkit, a stack of county ordinances thick enough to stop a bullet, her late husband's surveying equipment, and enough righteous fury to power a small city. She'd also recruited her most loyal ally, Gladys Morrison, from 42 Maple Street, whose own vendetta against Mike began when his music played past 9 p.m. "He's destroying our property values," Karen declared, spreading out official-looking documents across Gladys's dining room table. "But I've found our smoking gun." Gladys adjusted her reading glasses, squinting at the papers. "What am I looking at?" "Encroachment violations, noise ordinances, and," Karen's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "an unpermitted fence extension from 2019. She tapped a circled section with her pen. "He's been living in violation for 4 years. Can we get him evicted?" Karen's smile could have cut glass. "Better. We can make his life so miserable he'll move on his own." Phase 1 began at 2 p.m. sharp. Karen positioned herself at the exact spot where she claimed Mike's driveway invaded her property, armed with orange traffic cones, yellow caution tape, and a folding chair. She prepared a sign. "Property boundary. Do not cross." When Mike returned from work at 5:30, he found his driveway transformed into what looked like a crime scene. Karen sat in her chair like a guard dog, clipboard in hand, timing his every movement. "Seriously?" Mike climbed out of his car, exhausted from a 10-hour shift. "You're blockading my driveway?" "I'm protecting my property rights," Karen replied coolly, making notes on her clipboard. 5:32 p.m. Subject returned to disputed zone. "Subject? I have a name." "So does every other trespasser." She clicked her pen with practiced authority. "I've documented 6 separate violations today, including your morning departure at 7:15, which disturbed my peaceful enjoyment of my property." Mike rubbed his temples. "What do you want from me?" "Simple. Acknowledge the property line, move your parking spot back 6 inches, and submit a formal apology to the HOA for your violations." Karen's tone suggested she was being remarkably reasonable. "Oh, and a small compensation for damages to my coffee mug and emotional distress." "How much compensation?" $1,500. Mike laughed, actually laughed, which made Karen's eyes start twitching again. "You're out of your mind. I'm documenting this hostile response." Karen scribbled furiously. 5:34 p.m. Subject became verbally aggressive when presented with reasonable resolution. But Karen's fortress strategy backfired spectacularly when Mike simply walked around her caution tape, unlocked his front door, and disappeared inside. She sat in her chair for another 2 hours, clipboard clutched to her chest, waiting for something. Victory? Surrender? A sign from the property guards? At 7:45 p.m., Mike emerged with a steaming cup of coffee and a lawn chair of his own. He set it up directly across from Karen, close enough that their knees almost touched. "What are you doing?" Karen demanded. "Protecting my property rights," Mike replied, settling into his chair with a satisfied sigh. "I'm timing your every movement." 7:46 p.m. Subject positioned herself on disputed territory. They sat there as darkness fell, 2 stubborn forces locked in the world's most ridiculous standoff, neither willing to blink first. Karen's certainty began to crack around the edges, but her pride wouldn't let her retreat. This was her neighborhood, her rules, her victory to win, even if she had to sit in that driveway all night to claim it. By day 3 of the great driveway standoff, Karen had evolved from neighborhood nuisance to suburban guerrilla warfare specialist. She'd purchased a pop-up canopy, a mini fridge, and a weather radio. If Mike thought he could outlast her, he was about to learn exactly why 3 previous AHOA boards had tried, and failed, to remove her from power. "This is getting ridiculous," Mike's wife Sarah said, peeking through the curtains at Karen's increasingly elaborate setup. She'd added a small table, a sun umbrella, and what appeared to be a box ball set. "She'll get bored eventually," Mike replied, but doubt crept into his voice. It was Wednesday morning, and Karen showed no signs of surrendering. If anything, she seemed to be settling in for a siege. Karen's commitment to the cause had attracted attention. By 10 a.m., A small crowd of neighbors had gathered to witness the spectacle. Some brought folding chairs and coffee, turning the property dispute into unexpected neighborhood entertainment. $20 says she outlasts him, whispered Jim Fletcher from across the street. You're on, replied Maria Santos. My money's on the guy who actually has to go to work. But Karen had anticipated this problem. She'd taken a leave of absence from her part-time job at the city clerk's office, citing property rights advocacy as essential community service. Her savings account could sustain her for months if necessary. The breakthrough came when Karen spotted Mike's mail carrier approaching. She sprang into action with the precision of a military strategist. "Excuse me," she called to the postal worker, waving her clipboard. "I need to report a delivery concern." Gary, the mail carrier who'd been dealing with neighborhood drama for 15 years, sighed deeply. "What now, Mrs. Whitfield?" "That mailbox," Karen pointed dramatically at Mike's standard-issue postal box, "is positioned on disputed property. I have reason to believe mail delivery to that location constitutes federal trespassing." Gary stared at her for a long moment. "Ma'am, are you trying to get me to stop delivering mail to your neighbor?" "I'm trying to protect federal employees from unknowingly participating in property violations." Karen's tone implied she was doing Gary a tremendous favor. "I've researched the relevant statutes." Of course she had. Gary delivered the mail anyway. But Karen meticulously documented the federal conspiracy in her ever-growing file. By lunch, she'd also contacted the gas company about Mike's meter placement, the cable company about potential easement violations, and the city about his garbage can positioning. Mike watched this escalation with growing amazement and horror. "She's trying to cut off my utilities," he told Sarah over lunch. "Over 6 inches of driveway." "Maybe we should just move the car," Sarah suggested. "Absolutely not." Mike's jaw set with determination. "If I give in to this, she'll run our lives forever. Tomorrow it'll be our fence. Next week our garden. Next month she'll be measuring our grass height with a ruler." He wasn't wrong. In her heart, Karen was already planning phase 2 of her neighborhood improvement campaign. Mike's defeat would send a clear message. The HOO president's authority was absolute and property values would be protected at all costs. But that afternoon, Karen made her first tactical error. Emboldened by 3 days of successful boundary defense, she decided to expand her territorial claims. Using her late husband's surveying equipment, she began marking what she insisted were the true property lines throughout the neighborhood. By 4 p.m., she'd placed small flags in 3 other yards, each accompanied by a formal notice of boundary clarification and violation assessment. The neighbors who'd been enjoying the spectacle suddenly found Karen's crusade significantly less entertaining when it invaded their own property. Phone calls were made, alliances shifted, and Mike Chen, previously isolated in his battle against HOA tyranny, suddenly found himself with allies. The revolution was about to begin. Karen should have recognized the signs. When your 3-year reign as HOA president suddenly faces a unified rebellion, tactical retreat becomes the better part of valor. But Karen Whitfield had never retreated from anything in her life, and she wasn't about to start over something as trivial as an entire neighborhood turning against her. The emergency HOA meeting was called for Friday evening, and Karen entered the community center with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a political battle. Her mistake was assuming past victories guarantee future success. "We're going to address President Whitfield's recent enforcement activities," announced board member Tom Rodriguez, his diplomatic tone barely concealing months of pent-up frustration. The room was packed. 37 homeowners, the largest attendance in HOA history. Karen rose from her seat, clipboard in hand. "I appreciate the community engagement. As your elected president, I've been protecting our property values from flagrant violations, and—" "You measured my rose bushes with a tape measure," interrupted Helen Davies from Elm Street. "At 6 in the morning. The community standards clearly state. You told the Postal Service my mailbox was illegal." This from David Kim, who'd received a certified letter requiring immediate compliance corrections. The room erupted. 3 days of Karen's expanded territorial enforcement had transformed neighborhood amusement into genuine anger. She'd overplayed her hand spectacularly. Mike Chen stood up slowly, and the room quieted. "I just want to park in my own driveway," he said simply. "I've lived here 6 months. I follow the rules, keep my lawn mowed, haven't bothered anyone. But Mrs. Whitfield has decided 6 inches of asphalt is worth declaring war over. It's about principles." Karen shot back, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "Property boundaries matter. Standards matter. If we ignore small violations, then what?" Mike's patience finally snapped. The neighborhood collapses. Property values plummet. Dogs and cats living together? He gestured at the packed room. "Look around, Mrs. Whitfield. These people aren't here because they're worried about standards. They're here because they're tired of being bullied." The vote was swift and decisive. 31-6 to remove Karen from the HOA presidency, effective immediately. Her 3-year reign ended not with gracious defeat, but with her gathering her papers and muttering about ungrateful neighbors and declining civic responsibility. But Karen's story wasn't over. Saturday morning, Mike woke to find his driveway empty of orange cones and caution tape. Karen's surveillance station had vanished overnight, leaving only rectangular impressions in the grass where her equipment had stood. Victory felt anticlimactic, until he noticed the police car parked across the street. Officer Martinez approached with the weary expression of someone who dealt with neighborhood disputes for 15 years. "Mr. Chen, I need to ask you about your neighbor. What did she do now?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." Martinez consulted his notebook. "We received reports of trespassing, property damage, harassment, and attempted mail fraud. She filed 17 separate complaints yesterday alone." Mike's momentary triumph curdled into concern. "Where is she now?" "That's the problem. Nobody's seen her since last night. Her house looks empty, but her car's still in the driveway. Some neighbors are worried she might have, well, taken the HOA thing harder than expected." The realization hit Mike like a cold wave. In defeating Karen, had he pushed her too far? The woman who'd spent 4 days guarding 6 inches of driveway with military precision wouldn't simply disappear quietly into the night. As Officer Martinez walked away, Mike noticed something that made his blood run cold. Karen's front door was standing slightly ajar, and her morning newspaper lay untouched on the porch. Karen Whitfield hadn't given up. She was planning something bigger. The question was, what would a desperate ex-HOA president do when democracy had failed her? Karen Whitfield stood in her kitchen window at 6:47 a.m., coffee mug trembling in her manicured grip, watching her new neighbor Mike Chen back his beat-up Honda Civic 6 inches over what she was absolutely certain was her property line. 6 inches. The audacity made her eye twitch. "That's it," she muttered, marching outside in her pink fuzzy slippers and HOA president coffee mug held high like a weapon. "Excuse me. Excuse me." Mike, still half asleep and fumbling with his work bag, looked up to find a woman in a leopard print robe pointing dramatically at his rear bumper like it had personally insulted her ancestors. "Your car is trespassing," Karen announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 3 years perfecting the art of neighborhood intimidation. "I've measured. Twice." Mike blinked slowly. "Ma'am, I'm parked in my own driveway." "Wrong." Karen whipped out her phone, scrolling to a photo of a measuring tape stretched across asphalt. "According to the county records I pulled yesterday and cross-referenced with the 1987 subdivision plat, your driveway ends here." She drew an invisible line with her toe. "That Honda is squatting on Whitfield territory." The absurdity of the moment hit Mike like a caffeine rush. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious." Karen's chest puffed with righteous indignation. "I'm the HOA president, and I won't tolerate property violations. Move it, or I'll have it towed." Mike glanced at his watch. He was already running late for work. "Look, lady, I don't know what your deal is, but Mrs. Whitfield, and my deal is maintaining property values and community standards." She crossed her arms, transforming into an immovable force of suburban fury. "Standards you're currently violating." But Karen's triumph was short-lived. As she spun around to stomp back to her house, her fuzzy slipper caught a patch of morning dew on Mike's newspaper. Physics took over. Her arms windmilled frantically as she pitched forward, coffee mug launching skyward in a perfect arc before crashing down on Mike's Honda hood with a ceramic explosion that echoed through the quiet neighborhood. The silence that followed was deafening. Mike stared at the coffee-stained crater in his hood, then at Karen, who was sprawled on his driveway like a defeated superhero. "Well," he said finally, "I guess now we're both on my property." Karen's face cycled through 17 shades of red as she scrambled to her feet, fuzzy slippers now soaked and dignity thoroughly trampled. But instead of retreating, something hardened in her eyes. This wasn't over. This was war. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she hissed, gathering the remains of her presidential mug, and the county, and the police. As she limped back to her house, Karen's mind was already spinning with revenge plots. Mike Chen had no idea who he was dealing with. She'd been HOA president for 3 years, survived 2 recall attempts, and successfully banned garden gnomes, colorful mailboxes, and dogs over 30 pounds from the neighborhood. One Honda Civic wouldn't defeat her now.